Welcome to Touching Base, a podcast designed to give strategic insights in a laid-back format. At Klein, primary research is really the cornerstone of what we do here. So today I'm going to be turning that on its head and actually interviewing our researchers. I'm your host, Josh Mullenax, and I've got Karen Doskow and Alyssa Behrendt on the phone. Karen and Alyssa, how are you two today?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Hi, Josh. I'm great as well.
Great. Well, I'm excited to hear from you two today. Last edition, Karen and I actually did a podcast on home fragrances. It turned out really well, and you can find that on Klein's YouTube page. But for today, what we're going to be tackling is the topic of how beauty retailing is changing in times of COVID and beyond. So before we get into these sweeping trends and really tackling the industry overall, I want to start pretty macro. Karen and Alyssa, have you two been buying cosmetics as all of this has been happening?
I'll answer this one.
Okay.
Basically, for me, I'm not a big makeup person, but I would say I've been buying skincare. That's one thing that I've really stuck through. Since March, I continue to really stay on top of my skincare needs. What do you think, Alyssa?
I've actually been buying a lot of hair care products. I typically use a lot of diffusers and hair dryers whenever I would wash my hair and then dry it. But I've actually been playing around about how to style it without using those heat products and trying to have a less damaging routine. So I've actually been investing in a lot of styling.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome. And, as you've been buying these products, have you seen a change in how you're buying them since COVID has happened?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. For me, no. I've always really purchased online. I just found it easier to, better understand and read what comments and reviews are, and even find influencers to truly understand what I was purchasing. As someone who did used to work in retail, I really truly value what a lot of associates bring to the table. But sometimes it's just too hard to answer a question. So instead of kind of wasting my time with traveling to a store, I would always just search it out online and then end up purchasing there as well, since it was just easier for me.
Cool. And what about you, Karen?
I buy online and also in person. So it has shifted a little more towards online, but I have quite a few products, so I haven't really had to do a lot of replenishment.
Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. And I have a question for both of you in a second, but Alyssa, I want to kind of drill down into something that you said, more on the topic of influencers. Where do you see the role of influencers going now that we're in times of COVID and beyond? Do you see that becoming more or maybe even less significant?
It's interesting to see how that's evolved. Especially early on in the pandemic, there was a lot of talk surrounding how important influencers were, but also their language in terms of what they were putting out there. There were some brands that actually dropped influencers because they weren't, promoting social distancing and things like that. So it's interesting to see how that all evolved. I do think they're still pretty important. A lot of consumers do look to them, and most marketers still use that as coupled with social media as the primary way to market products. But it is important that they're authentic. And that's really a hated term, especially when talking about influencers, but it's still so important that consumers see themselves in whoever is talking about the product and whoever's, selling it to them. So it's still definitely important. It hasn't really lost its importance in any way, but it has kind of evolved a little bit as social distancing and health and safety standards have evolved throughout the pandemic.
Can I chime in here a little bit also, Alyssa? One of the things, this is something that I really feel like I've been very turned on to, is I've been following a lot of dermatologists. As you know, Josh, we report on professional skincare, and a lot of the dermatologists have become influencers. And there's just so much information that they're sharing, not just about, skincare, but about, I don't know, just social distancing and what to do if you have mask knee. And so I would say like doctors have become influencers also, and I've been, spending quite a bit of time listening to what they've had to say on their Instagram and Instagram live feeds.
That's interesting. And I think that, from my limited experience with influencers, it feels like more of a tug of war between personality and knowledge. And, given that we have this virus going around, do you think that knowledge is now facts and, things that you can actually benchmark? Do you think that that's becoming more important as we move on?
That's a great question. I mean, I think for me, you know, these doctors are scientists that knowledge is really critical, and in a time like this, knowledge is probably really important. But I don't know, Alyssa, what do you think?
I can see both really having an impact. Like you were saying, doctors with their knowledge are really crucial to helping spread awareness. But at the same time, social media, which is prominently where these influencers are, it's really become an escape for a lot of consumers. So personality would also be important there. So I think it kind of depends ultimately maybe on what they're shopping for, maybe.
Yeah.
As well as even like what they're going online looking at, like whether they want that escapism or whether they want truth and facts.
That's a really good point. Alyssa, one of the things I do like about some of these doctor influencers, they're women dermatologists that I'm following, is I do love their personalities and the fact that they're sharing things about their life, about like what they like to do during the pandemic, their kids, the masks that they're buying. So you know what? You're absolutely right about that. I identify with them, and I enjoy their personalities. So it's not just about science. You have to kind of be able to relate and enjoy it, because it is entertainment, really.
That is interesting. And, I think that this has been kind of a trial for retailers overall, and really just what role they're going to allow, not just influencers, but technology, just as a whole, to influence how they're selling their products. And so, what I want to ask both of you is really how you see the role of technology changing and evolving as we go through 2020 and where we see it going into the future.
Yeah, I can start with this one. There's really three pillars of how I've kind of seen technology evolve throughout the pandemic. The first one was really like augmented reality, augmented reality and artificial intelligence, and how that leveraged into like these digital try-on services that you see through like Sephora and Ulta, kind of prompting those color cosmetic purchases and really trying to bring the in-store experience home in that way. But then you also have brands like eSalon and Madison Reed, these customized hair coloring, where they're using technology to really kind of customize and bring that like service experience home. Those are like the two branded side where I see like it really impacting the end consumer. But then you also have some retailers really looking into like tech expansion for delivery and shipment. So Target's really the big one that I've found here. They acquired Shipt a few years ago, but then more recently, I believe it was back in May, they acquired Deliv. And that's really just to more efficiently batch and bundle all these online orders to get them out more efficiently to consumers. So technology has really, really become huge, especially in making the online shopping experience more efficient.
But Karen, before we get to you, just on the topic of Target, I feel like I never go into Target really knowing what I want. It just kind of appears to me as I'm shopping. Like most of what I get there is just, kind of spontaneous buys. Do you think technology is going to be able to keep up with, what people would be buying in stores?
Provided that they're the recommendations that pop up at the bottom, when you're shopping, I think provided technology and like the cookie interface whenever you're shopping online on websites, provided that's up to par with like each specific retailer, I think it might be okay. Just because if they see anything online and they're recommended that interests them, it can all just link together and lead to more purchases. So I think it should be okay.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I know that Amazon does an excellent job with that, and there's quite a
Right.
few other brands that have been really investing in it. It seems like technology is taking off, but what mode of really selling cosmetics and personal care products overall do you two think is really going to take the hardest hit?
Brick and mortar. And I would say there's brick and mortar that have been deemed essential retailers throughout the pandemic, and those are stores like Target and Walmart and drugstores. So those have done okay, but it's the ones that haven't been deemed necessary or essential, and those are really the prestige outlets, the department stores, the specialty stores. Although, Sephora and Ulta have pretty strong e-commerce sites, but I would say the higher end department stores are probably gonna take the biggest hits. What do you think, Alyssa?
Yeah, I agree. Any kind of like brick and mortar that really isn't leveraging their online shopping platform, they're just
Mhm.
not doing well during all this. And then department stores especially are taking the strongest hit just because they were already struggling financial prior to the pandemic. And with so many that had declared bankruptcy in 2019, it's just the pandemic really destroyed a lot of turnaround plans, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say just as a whole, any company, any brick and mortar or brand that doesn't have a strong digital platform really was caught with their pants down, really has had a very hard time pivoting during this time and is really playing a big game of catch up. We've seen this with a couple of brands, but a lot of brands have been preparing not for a pandemic, but they've been really, they realize that e-commerce is really, it's at the center of everything. We've gone from an omni-channel, uh, algorithm, I guess if that's what you want to call it, to really e-commerce being at the center of everything, and brick and mortar supporting it.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And as these brands try to shift in the digital landscape, I know that a lot of retailers, I said brands, I meant retailers, but as they are shifting and finding their space online, I know that a lot of them had a pretty strong indie focus in 2019. Um, do you think that that's going to continue to play out in the pandemic? Do you think indie brands continue to thrive?
Yeah, I definitely think that that's something that is going to continue in the future. There are two like really big initiatives that I see focused around indies at the moment. The first one's clean beauty, which for me was actually kind of a surprising trend. I didn't expect it to still be so strong during a health crisis. But indie brands really accounted for a significant portion of like that clean, natural beauty market. But then we also see the 15% pledge, which is something that has risen recently because of a lot of social injustice that we've been seeing in the US. And there have been a lot of retailers making a pledge to carry more Black-owned beauty brands. And a lot of these do happen to be indies.
That's amazing. And Karen, what do you think about this?
I don't, I don't, I don't really have any thoughts on it. I mean, I think indie brands are, exciting, and certainly during a pandemic, um, the consumers have a lot of time to explore new brands, and certainly these pop up. I mean, I'll give you an example of one that I found during the pandemic. Um, I usually go to a spa or a nail salon every week to have my nails done. It's something I really enjoy. And I had no idea how to do my own nails. That's probably sounds really pathetic to everyone. It is pathetic, actually. So I discovered this brand called Olive and June. It was started by a woman out in California, and she had Manny boot camps every day going on YouTube, and she had Manny boxes, and so I do think that, like, that's an example of something that I kind of bumped into during the salons being shuttered. But yeah, I think that there's definitely a place for indies, especially in a virtual world.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. Just these small agile companies that are kind of filling the cracks that have been left from, this absolute tragedy that's happened. Well, I just kind of want to look forward into, 2021 and beyond. What do you think are some things that we should be looking out for?
Well, that's one thing that we really focus in our beauty retailing report, is 2019 and actually 2020 is really in the rear view mirror of most retailers and brands. But in terms of what to look out for, um, probably more of the same. I would think. I think just like a greater presence of all the beauty brands on e-com, but like a lot of excitement in terms of how to remotely sample a brand, or consultations, or just like a lot more service oriented e-com. I don't know, Liz, what are your thoughts on what the future holds for beauty in terms of retailing? I will say that a lot of people are probably very anxious. I mean, we've heard a lot of stories that, stores have been pretty busy. There are those people, and I guess I would be one too, that really miss the excitement and the experiential part of brick and mortar stores. It's hard to replace that. But I think that that's something that really is going to be necessary, that a lot of these websites or digital platforms try to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think the desire for shopping is still there. And when, you first heard about consumers jumping at the first opportunity to get back and how there was still such a high demand for shopping, I just always wondered how beauty factored into that, because I felt shopping was just so different when it comes to like touching and sampling a beauty product versus, kind of going in and picking up like a dress and holding it against you and kind of figuring out and guessing it there, just as an example. So desire for shopping is still there, but I'm just still not sure how brick and mortar, especially those that really have like that community driven atmosphere, it's going to be really interesting to see how they pivot their brand image and their shopping experience to better fit within these social distancing and safety guidelines. That being said, I do think direct sales, especially internet and e-com, that's really going to continue to be strong and continue to grow throughout 2021 and then into the future as well. But that's really the easiest one to predict right now.
Agreed. You're absolutely right. That's an easy one. It's really, you're absolutely right, Alyssa. It's really what the future holds from a science standpoint in terms of, a vaccine. I think that, and people wanting to go out, and yeah, that's absolutely right.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Before I let you go, are there any brands that you've just kind of been looking out at that you've been just really excited about recently?
Well, Karen, you found Olive in June, right? That was your
yeah,
your
yeah, that was
brand.
my big find. Yeah, that was my big
Okay.
find. So I was pretty excited about that. That was really like my big find, and watching these dermatologist influencers, that's been pretty exciting. What about you, Alyssa?
I really like the brand Aness. They kind of do like these body masks and like these butt masks. So they're kind of interesting, and it's really fun that they had already promoted like the self-care aspect of it, but they took it to a whole new level during the pandemic, and it was just so fun to like see a cheeky product or an Instagram post instead of something so serious whenever scrolling through social media feeds. So I really liked them. Yeah, I think they did a really great job with kind of promoting that self-care aspect, but in a really authentic way and not kind of pushing some overdone narrative.
Awesome. Well, Both of you, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. To all of our listeners, I hope that this provided some useful insight, and this is just one part of the series, so we hope to catch you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.